Well, political parties continue to react to the developments in Venezuela. The Freedom Front Plus has come out strongly and stated that its GNU partner, the ANC, cannot speak on behalf of all South Africans on Venezuela or foreign policy. FF Plus leader Dr Corné Mulder has welcomed recent U.S. action against Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, describing his government as illegitimate and responsible for widespread human rights abuses. He joins us now via video link. Dr. Mulder, very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the late edition.
Yes, good evening and thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure having you join us this evening. First of all, Dr. Mulder, the FF Plus says that the ANC cannot speak on behalf of all South Africans on Venezuela or foreign policy. Now, in a government of national unity, who does legitimately speak for South Africa internationally, and how, disagreements like these be resolved without weakening the country's global standing?
That's a very good question, and that's one of the things that concern me very much. Unfortunately, when the government of national unity was negotiated between the Democratic Alliance and the ANC insisted that international relations would be the exclusive domain of the ANC alone. I don't think how could anybody agree to that. So that is where we are at the moment. It's the ANC's positions that we are hearing all the time. And it's not the position of the government of national unity. These things should be discussed. When we had a boss parade about a month or so ago, at the beginning of November, I did ask that the international relations be on the agenda. It was put on the agenda, but it was not discussed. It was postponed to a further meeting, and we will have that kind of discussion. And obviously, it's important that we do find some common ground in terms of South Africa's national interest and in terms of where South Africa should position itself.
But then, Dr. Mulder, if every GNU partner publicly advances its own foreign policy positions, does that not risk turning South Africa into a diplomatically incoherent state? I mean, where do we draw the line between pluralism and instability?
Well, at the moment, that's exactly what's happening. The ANC is just pushing their own program in terms of international relations, and they say that is South Africa. It's not the view of all South Africans. It may be the view of the ANC, but it's not the view of all South Africans. So that's a very contentious thing that needs to be discussed, and a way it needs to be found forward in terms of that. I will never agree that the ANC can speak on my behalf in terms of international relations. I do not agree with their position.
Well, you've now welcomed recent U.S. action against President Nicolás Maduro. Should South Africa then align itself with unilateral actions by global powers, even when those actions bypass multilateral institutions like the United Nations?
It depends on what that action entails. I think there's a misunderstanding, maybe on purpose, or purposefully so. The United States did not invade Venezuela. The United States did not declare war against Venezuela. The United States did not topple the regime in Venezuela. They acted in terms of a legitimate indictment against a fugitive of justice, Mr. Maduro, and his wife. And they were apprehended, and they were now escorted, and they will face trial for the claims and the indictment and the charge sheet against them. So that is what basically happened. And I'm very surprised that some of South Africa's political parties like the ANC is against that.
Well, the fact that you are saying that this has been a misunderstanding, but then on what legal or moral framework does your party base its support for external intervention against a sovereign state?
It was not intervention against a sovereign state. It was the apprehension of a fugitive of justice, something completely different. And I find it very strange that the ANC is so very concerned at the moment about sovereignty of states. I didn't hear them say one single word when Russia invaded Ukraine. Well,
let's push the envelope a little bit further. Do the human rights abuses justify foreign military action or regime change? And if so, who then decides which governments qualify and which do not?
Yes, well, it's a different topic to a certain extent that you are now discussing, and I don't have a problem to do that. If the idea is to have regime change, then we should talk in terms of when that is acceptable and when that is not acceptable. And as I've pointed out, this was not the intention. It didn't happen. There's no regime change at the moment. But it's also a question, should countries be able and states be able to hide behind sovereignty while at the same time violating the rights of their citizens as well as certain provisions of international instruments? And that's a fine balance that one needs to address.
Maybe if I could reframe my question differently, perhaps if you could take us into your confidence, whether there's a danger that supporting powerful states acting unilaterally sets a precedent that could one day be used against the weaker countries, including African states.
I don't think that's necessarily so. We must also understand that since the Second World War, we've had a different dispensation internationally. And in terms of international law, there are all kinds of rules, etc., etc. But that is not an ultimate, it's not the final say. We all know how these things operate. For example, even in the Security Council, you have the permanent members who have a veto power in terms of any decisions taken. And that is just the reality, that some countries, unfortunately, are stronger than others.
Right.
Some countries have more muscle, they've got more military power. And we need to find a balance in terms of accommodating the views internationally. But then we also understand that some of the bigger countries act strongly, and they're entitled, or they're not entitled, but they can do that in terms of what they perceive to be their best interests. And we saw the exact example when Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia argued that it's a threat to the to Russian national security, that they do not want to see that Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, and they invaded that government and that state. So it happens from time to time. It's unfortunate, but that's just the reality. But in this specific case that we are referring to now, I'm adamant it was not an invasion of the sovereignty of Ukraine, of Venezuela. It was the arrest of a fugitive of justice.
Well, critics point to the historical links between the FF Plus and the former National Party, including leadership and ideological continuity. I mean, given that the apartheid government was internationally condemned and later declared a crimes against humanity, how then do you respond to accusations of moral inconsistency when judging other governments' legitimacy?
There's no link whatsoever between the Freedom Front Plus and any other former political party. The Freedom Front Plus was a party founded in 1994 in our own right. We've got no connection, we've got no links with the National Party or any policies of the National Party. None whatsoever.
But then do you acknowledge that South Africa's history places, I would say, a special responsibility on political leaders to be quite cautious when endorsing external forces against sovereign states?
No, but you are sticking to the same point over and over again, and I just need to repeat it again. It was not an invasion of a sovereign country, it was the apprehension of the fugitive of justice. And he will have his day in court, and if he's innocent, he will prove that he's innocent, and that will be the end of it. But in the meantime, the United States acted in a certain manner, and they took certain steps to protect what they perceive to be a threat to their national security interests.
Dr. Mulder, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.